Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the May 21st, 2020 meeting of the Inspector General Committee to order. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
State Attorney Ehrenberg. Chair Cruz.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraffenreich.
Here.
Public Defender Howitt.
Present here, excuse me.
Vice Chair Kreidel.
Present.
Commissioner Kugler.
This is Carrie Howard. It's really hard to hear. From folks in the room.
Commissioner Romano.
Here.
Okay, thank you for the colleagues that are here on the dais and at home or at their office on WebEx. I'd like to ask General Kerry to come up and just tell the audience and the other members of the committee the WebEx instructions that we'll use for the meeting here.
Yes, thank you. We have for the WebEx, the members attending remotely, if you would just, if you have comments or questions or want to speak, if you would, the first thing, state your name so we could have the clerk could note that in the records, and also Channel 20 will put your photo up on the screen for the public to see. Also, when you're not speaking, if you will keep your microphone on mute during that time. Thank you, and I'll try to speak up, I think some, but I think not all. We've only heard the one problem with the volume, so I'll try to speak up when I come to give my presentation.
Thank you, General Kerry. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the Inspector General Committee meeting minutes of November 14th, 2019, and I think all the members of the committee have had these minutes for a while. Could I have a motion on the minutes for approval?
Moved.
Rodney Romano, move approval as published.
Okay, first, Commissioner Kreidel, move and second by Commissioner Romano. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. General Kerry, if we could call on you to come up and present your 6-month report.
Okay, well, good morning, and thank you for coming here this morning, and all those who are out. I wanted to do a special welcome to our new members, Carol DeGraffenreich and also Michael Kugler. Hopefully he'll be able to join us here shortly. So I'll launch into our report, and again, if anyone at any time along the presentation has any questions or comments, please feel free to stop me, and we'll have that discussion. Here's the outline of what we're going to discuss today. Our mission, terminology, our activities, the meat of it, budget and staffing. We'll give a legal update, plans about where we're going to be heading in the future, and then a summary of our accomplishments to date. First, our mission. The mission for our office, this is a very summarized statement of our mission, which is very similar to any Inspector General at local, state, federal level. It's basically to promote integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness in government. And you'll often see it, and you'll see it in just about all our ordinance, as well as any ordinance, to detect, prevent, fraud, waste, and abuse in government. Well, I like to put it in these other terms that I'd like to talk about. Our mission is oversight, insight, and foresight. First of all, IG's our role that everybody knows us for is that oversight aspect, in that we help to hold government accountable for all of those taxpayer dollars and also for the actions the government does. Insight, we provide insight in helping good people, which is the vast majority of people in government at all levels, in basically helping good people make government better, make it more efficient and effective, bringing best practices, giving insight on ideas on how we can do our government better. And then finally, foresight. And that's our preventative role. That's our teaching, training, getting out and about, and being just our presence is preventative in many aspects, in preventing fraud, waste, abuse, and sharing best practices before we have to go in. We'd rather do that than go in on the other side to do investigations. Here's a review of some of our teammates, our senior team members here, and many of them are here today, going around the clock. Calinthia Dillard, my deputy IG and general counsel, is here, and she'll be speaking later on. Karen Mayer is our director of contract oversight and evaluations, who's not here today. But again, Karen has extensive experience at the local and state level in procurement, contracting, and is a great leader for our contract oversight and evaluations. Then we have Hillary Beaujean. Hillary's here today, head of our audits. Again, she's a CPA, has numerous certifications and experience, head of our auditing department, and again, does a great job. Stuart Robinson is here with us today, head of investigations. Stuart has extensive experience. He's a retired FBI agent, supervisory special agent, years of experience of investigations in public corruption, and he's been a real catch to have him here. We also have here today a few other folks. We have Jeff Whaley right up front here, our IT specialist who's here to help make all of this happen. And I'll introduce again Barbara Bellafiore as our new executive assistant here. A great catch and glad to have her on board. And we have Anthony Bennett back there. So some of you might know Anthony Bennett, our deputy director for investigations. Again, just to welcome, since the last time that we've met together, new folks. Again, I mentioned Barbara here as our new executive assistant, and jumped in and is doing a fantastic job for us. We also have a new intake specialist who's not here today, Tecia Morris. And again, she's new, came aboard just at the start of the year, and doing a good job on the intake side, working with Evangeline Rentz on all of the intake that comes into the office. These are certifications. Again, we have numerous certifications that we could brag about, and I've talked about before. Just during this last 6 months period, certifications that some of our staff received. Calinthia became a certified Inspector General Auditor at our Inspector General Institute that we put on. She also became a certified critical thinking, certificate in critical thinking from Cornell University. She's already one of our top critical thinkers in the office, and she's even become better and received a certificate in that from Cornell. Anthony Bennett, again, he became a certified IG investigator. We had Sean Robinson, became a certified IG auditor, along with Linda Connor. And then we had Tiffany Thomas become a certified Inspector General Inspector Evaluator during this period. Now, I want to, not just only for some of our members who've been here for a while, but also for some of our new members, terminology is critical, and all professional organizations and types of professional folks, they usually will have some unique terminology, unique terms that are specialized to them. So I'd like to go over just a review of some of our terminology that you'll be hearing during the presentation. First of all, it's question cost. This is a term that comes up, and again, this wasn't created with this office. It originally came, you will see that in the 1978 Inspector General Act. This term is used by Inspector Generals, again, at all levels. It's a standard term that you will see, and that we use it in many of our reports. Again, the key factors of when we identify question cost, that it's they come about that they may be a violation of law, regulation, contract, policy, or procedure. Oftentimes, we question costs when the expenditures are not supported by accurate or sufficient documentation, or the cost may be unnecessary or unreasonable. This has been the majority of our findings when it comes to dollars and cents. This is often in most IGs that they'll find dollars and cents. And I like to summarize this in, it's not always waste or fraud involved in this. Many times it's not. I like to generally characterize this as the bottom line: our taxpayer dollars are not being accounted for properly. And that is key to account for our taxpayer dollars, and that we're spending the dollars according to proper policy or law, and also that we're keeping accurate records to account for the spending of those taxpayer dollars. That's critical. This is a critical aspect, because if you don't take proper accountability and you're not writing the justifications of spending when we're spending those dollars, the next step is it makes it a higher risk for fraud, waste, abuse. So it's critical that we keep track of and that we're making sure that we're accounting for the way we're spending those dollars. Next, you'll see us often talk about potential cost savings. So these are potential cost savings that we we find in investigations, audits, and reviews. And that really covers two categories of potential cost savings. One of those categories are identified cost, and the other category in potential cost savings are avoidable cost. And I'll talk about each of those terms. First, identified cost, again, are costs that have been identified that have potential of being returned to the entity to offset taxpayers' dollars. In other words, that's dollars that we found that was been spent that possibly improperly, or that somebody could have, there could have been a theft involved, or there could have been a mispayment to a vendor, to an individual that was not authorized, that we could potentially recoup. So that's dollars that are possibly recouped by the entity. The other term is avoidable cost. And this is cost that an entity makes that will incur in the future. So these are costs that we could avoid in the future, that will not have to incur in lost funds or anticipated increased revenue, i.e. savings in the future, if they implement the IG recommendation that we found. Now, it's usually that would come about in a 3-year term. We use a 3-year term out. The federal government often goes up to a 5-year term for their term. We've decided here at the local level to use a 3-year term, or the extent of the contract. If the contract, by renewing or doing a contract, it's whatever the contract terms are. So that in the federal term, they often use, you might see in federal IG's terms, they might say funds put to better use. That's terminology that they will often use that is somewhat synonymous to avoidable cost. So these are the categories of costs that you'll see in our reporting here. Now we'll go into our activities, our specific activities, some of the highlights of the major activities during the last 6-month period. And this is the order of which we'll go down. First, we'll talk about investigations and intake. And this is our 6-month period, this last 6-month period compared to the previous 6-month period. Fairly close. You might note it's slightly down in complaints of wrongdoing. And I think that part of that is we hit into the first of the year. We started hitting the COVID-19 shutdowns. Frankly, since that, you will see in my next report that complaints have gone down and call-ins have gone down since the stay-at-home orders have gone into place. I might note, too, just some more terminology for some of our newer members. Down at the bottom, I have intake activities that led to, you can see it led to an investigation for referrals to our contract oversight division, 6 referrals to law enforcement agencies or commission on ethics, and then we had 1 management inquiry and 11 management referrals. Now, just back to terminology. A management inquiry is where we have a complaint, it comes into our office, and we send that down to the county or one of the municipalities, and we ask them to inquire into this. And we ask them their inquiry, then we ask them to forward their response back to us, what they found, or if they did find that there was some inappropriate or some action that wasn't done right, there any corrective actions that they took. And if we determine, we'll do an evaluation. If that's satisfactory, then we'll close it out. If we determine that we need to look more into that, sometimes we will launch an investigation if we believe, no, there needs to be more formally looked into this. The management referrals are things like we refer those down to the county or to the municipalities, and they're not required to send a response to us. And those are some of the lower, as we assess the magnitude of the complaint. For a good example I often use is someone would complain that they called in to one of the cities and they thought the person who answered the phone was not professional in their speaking, or they came up and the receptionist at the window was not professional. Well, that's something that's important, and that's something the city should know about, but those are types of things that will refer down to the city or the county for them to take appropriate action on, and there's no requirement for them to formally respond to us. Now, specifically, as far as our investigative activities, these are activities compared to the previous 6 months. You can see 8 investigations, ongoing investigations during this period. We had 9 referrals to law enforcement or the Commission on Ethics, issued 2 reports, and we made 2 recommendations, and both of those recommendations were accepted. And I'll go into each one of our reports. This first report, we had an allegation come in about the County Parks and Recreation Department. The complaint was that they submitted a fraudulent claim to FEMA for reimbursement after the 2017 Hurricane Irma. We investigated this, and what we found is that they did submit an inaccurate claim, though there was not sufficient evidence to show that this claim was submitted with intent to defraud. And as soon as the county found out that the claim had been submitted, they notified FEMA. They took appropriate actions, and FEMA did not reimburse the county for the expenditures of the cost that was submitted originally. So that's a good example of not all things we investigate, again, are substantiated, but they're important that we look into it, and it cleared the record up that it looked like on the surface to some folks that we had submitted a fraudulent claim, and what we found out that there was not evidence to show that. And again, it was, they took, as soon as it came to their action, they took action with FEMA and notified them. So this is a good case of not, we're not always looking for the bad, we're looking objectively into a complaint. Are they sufficient to investigate? And our job is not to catch bad guys or prove error. Our job as Inspector Generals are to find the facts. Sometimes we find there is not sufficient facts and to substantiate that, and sometimes we do. Our next report, I often jokingly call this Shreddergate. We had a allegation that the county, we had a county provider, a vendor, who shreds our documents. And the shredding, the allegation was that the service was not weighing the documents in compliance with the contract. Well, we investigated that, and we investigated this, and we saw that there was some instances where they were not weighing some of the materials. But we did not find that this was widespread. We found this was on some occasions, and again, it was not a significant large cost. So we did find that there was sometimes where they were not weighing the paper before they shred this. We made recommendations to both the county and to the vendor to make sure that they properly weigh and they properly bill the county, and also to set up internal controls not only for the vendor but for the county to view. Next is our contract oversight and evaluation highlights. Here's a summary of what the division's been doing the last 6 months. 2 reports issued, 10 recommendations made, of which they were all accepted, and they put out some tips and trends. They're very active in educating and promoting best practices and new laws that come out to educate. This is just an example of all of the contracts that the division looks at. It's fairly mixed between the county, the municipalities. Some of those in red are mixed county municipality contracts, and then the 1% of special districts is the oversight of the contracts of and the procurement activities of Solid Waste Authority and Children's Services Council. Now we'll go into a couple of their reports. One, I briefly mentioned this the last 6 months. We assigned them a follow-up based on some discussions in our meeting here at the IG committee on an audit that we had conducted in Riviera Beach, that they had some missing property. So we did a follow-up. Yes, do we have a question or comment? Okay, we did a follow-up. Riviera Beach couldn't account for some of their items. We went back. They said they were going to try to account for some of the items. Well, what we found was most of these items, again, all of the items were under the $1,000 limit. And so there were smaller items that weren't put on an inventory list, very difficult, had a number of years, a number of people coming and going. And when it came down to it, 13 of the 17 items they still could not account for. When they looked for them, they did what we believe was an honest job trying to locate those. We inquired into it, but again, we found that these items were low threshold dollars. The purchase receipts, they just did not have a sufficient tracking system in place. Staff turnover, like I said, was a large part of the reason for this. Now, again, I have to say that we've been working with Riviera Beach. You'll see talk about an audit that we've done since, but Riviera Beach have been trying to do a good job at bringing their policies up to date, setting internal controls in place to track all of their equipment. They have a new system in place that track purchases, so they've done a good job on trying to come online and having better accountability for large dollar amounts and small dollar amounts of equipment. The next report we have here is on Pahokee, the city of Pahokee, and Techno Marine Construction. Again, this complaint, it began with a complaint, and this is another good representation of what the IG concept is all about. So it's not just about investigations. This is a complaint that came into our intake department. The investigators received this complaint, and because we have specialists, a specialist contract procurement oversight division, they determined this is we determined that this would be better for that division to look into rather than an investigator. So we had our specialist who looks into contracts, deals with this aspect. We turned it over to the Contract Oversight and Evaluation Division to look into. And the allegation was that the city manager authorized a payment of $150,000 to Techno Marine Construction for work at the marina that Technomarine never completed. In fact, Technomarine, after they received this money, filed bankruptcy, and so the city and the state were out this money. So here's what we found after our review of that. We found that the city manager did improperly authorize the payment of the $150,000 to Technomarine in violation of the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity grant agreement that they had. The city also failed to comply with Florida statutes by not requiring Technomarine to secure a payment and perform its surety bond before beginning any work, and by paying Technomarine before receiving the certified copy of the recorded bond. The city also violated their own city ordinance and the FDOE agreement that they had signed by not issuing a competitive solicitation for services. Finally, Technomarine submitted a false pay app for the $150,000 to the city, certifying that it completed the work which it had not completed. So the next slide will talk about some other outcomes. So the outcomes here is, again, we made 10 recommendations that will assist the city in strengthening their internal controls and being in compliance with laws. But we also referred this to, one, we referred it to violation of Florida statutes to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, who's looking into that. And we also made the referral of Technomarine to the state of Florida Department of Legal Affairs for review for potential Florida violation of Florida statutes, false claims, of which they are at the present looking into. Now again, our contract oversight and evaluations division, again, this is the tip of the iceberg. We've talked before, just so much of their work and so much of their important work is done that's not visible. They attend, again, numerous selection committee meetings. They provide advice. On the one hand, red flags that they see where somebody might be going off track, and on the other side, they provide best practices. They're an office that they receive many call-ins from the cities, particularly the municipalities often will call in and ask for advice to see if they're, what they're doing, that their procurement activities, are they right, and do they have any direction, steerage for them? And we give general guidance. We don't do management policy, but we do general guidance, again, to keep them within the guardrails, and they're very appreciated by a number of procurement folks out there. Now we'll talk about our audits. And here are our 6-month audits of this last 6 months compared to the previous 6 months. Now you see we went down in reports, but some of these reports were some, what happened the last 6 months just happened to be this ebbs and flows. We had done a lot of reports that came to fruition at that time, some smaller audits that were done that could be done in a smaller time frame that were completed the previous 6 months, and so that we did 2 in the last reporting period. Now I'll talk about those 2 audits that we did do. Now this first audit, again, this is the good news portion of this. This audit was requested by the city of Palm Beach. So a number of times we do audits for all different types of reasons, risks that we find, referrals that we do evaluation that we think we should be doing them. And a number of our audits come from requests from either the cities or the county for us to conduct these audits. And again, this was an audit requested by the town of Palm Beach. And it was good news overall. We found that their controls, it was of their internal controls and data security, and we found that their controls were generally adequate. Everything was pretty much online. They did have some weaknesses in internal controls and data security that we found, and we made some recommendations to them. The city, as a result of our audit, they revised their IT policy and increased controls, limited access to other employees. They're reviewing user access annually, now, and they also are doing some training for their staff on the confidential nature of keeping this information on driver's license and motor vehicle information. So this was, again, a quick audit that we could do for the city to help them tighten up their procedures. The next audit was on the town of Haverhill, a revenue audit. Again, we found some of the standard things that we often find in revenue audits when we conduct these in the municipalities. That they did lose some potential interest on their revenue. They had lacked sufficient controls and reviews and oversight on cash receipts, financial reporting process, lacked written policies and procedures for the revenue and cash receipt activities, potential sales tax owed for rental of the pavilion that they had not keeping track of that could be recouped. And they also lack some written guidance on their IT processes. Again, they're taking some action to potentially recoup some of those sales tax that's owed to them, implementing and update their internal controls and written policies, and also the staff will be trained on the new policies.
General,
Sir.
if we could go back to the audit activities chart. Is there any reference anywhere in your report as to the number of open audits that are currently being conducted?
No, we don't, we have not discussed. We could put that in future, if you would like that in the future, we could put how many audits we currently have open right now that are in the process of being conducted. I know we mentioned that on our investigation, so we could do that for our audits. We have not done that in the past. I could probably tell, Hillary, do you know how many? We currently have 12 audits in progress, so. And again, timing's everything, so this next time you'll probably see, instead of 2, you'll see a number of audits during this period, and it's a matter of, as you well know, the nature of audits. Some of them can be very short-lived and some can take a good time, and there could be other, these audits, some of them because of the shutdown and the stay-at-home procedure, getting some of the information might have slowed down a little bit.
I think that would be worthwhile because the number of issued reports is not indicative of the workload.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good point. I know in the minutes from November, we talked about open, but it was investigations,
Yes.
not audits. So that was a good point.
Yes, that's
Thank
a good
you.
point. We will do that. So yeah,
Commissioner
you
Cardell.
see our open investigations that are ongoing, but yes, we have, so we'll include that in the future of ongoing current audits that are going on.
Thank you.
Now, this is outside of the reporting period, but sometimes I like to report on reports that were recently in the news, just past the reporting period. So I'm sure you saw this was in the news, both in print and in the media, and a number of different media approaches that came out here recently. We conducted an audit at Riviera Beach on their separation process. And again, this was another at the request of Riviera Beach. Their city council, when they found over a year ago, they had found that they had been paying out insurance on employees who had long gone from the city. So they had found this, it had come to their attention, and they had asked us to do a forensic audit to get down in the details to find exactly how much money they had lost, how much money, what were the reasons for this, and also make recommendations on what they might do to make corrective actions. So we did find that, again, the city law, there were question costs paying out over $1 million of people who had left the city in about, I think, was it a 4-year period? 5-year period, around 400 folks who had left, just over 400 folks, and they had continued on a number of these folks, continue to pay the insurance company their insurance premiums for these folks who had left. And So we found that one thing they've been doing, they've been paying tuition assistance that they offer people in most government organizations, or a number of government organizations. You sign an agreement that if you receive tuition assistance or education benefits, that if you leave within a certain amount of time, you must pay it back. Well, they had not been recouping that money from former employees. Final payouts to former employees were not in compliance with policies and labor agreements, and they lacked adequate documentations. Computer access for some, they still had people on the rolls who had been left and had still had access. Now, the few people that they did have on the rolls that had access, there was no evidence we found that it actually tried to come in or in any ways had gained access to any of the information of the city, but they had just not taken them off the rolls, the access removal. So the city, again, they implemented a review and oversight policies to ensure the insurance benefits are not paid to separated employees, and they are updating their policies and procedures for employment separations, getting simple recommendations like we made a simple checklist, and there was a wide series of why these employees had left and they were still on the rolls. There wasn't a centralized point that it came through why a number of the people were checked off, and so there was a number of reasons, just weak internal controls that caused these problems. And unfortunately, the insurance company did pay back some of the money, but not all of it, because it was, again, the city's fault that did not notify the companies that they were receiving that money. But another good example of where a city requested our assistance and requested us to help audit them, and so partnershiping with them to help make government better. And I'm frozen there. Jeff, can you, okay, pull me forward? Thank you. Now we'll talk about training and outreach. Next slide, please. Okay, these are some of our outreach and training that we've done over the time. Again, the first category is to government, reach out training, and then the next blue category is to citizen groups. Again, these range everything in government to I brief new employees at the county, supervisor training at the county. That's a lot of that is done in the county government groups. Local groups are spread out from city, different civic organizations. I must say too, during this next period, you're going to see both of these bars go down dramatically, because a number of the outside groups, obviously, they're not meeting. And so you will see this go down in the next 6-month period. Next. Budget and staffing, next. Okay, as you can see, again, originally, we've talked about this before, we were authorized originally for both the county and the city of 40 people. We currently have 27 funded positions. I want to say the last few years, again, the county, we're starting to go, we've gone in the right direction. In fiscal year 19, they authorized, increased us by 2 positions. And then in fiscal year 20, we requested more folks. They upped us another 2. I had requested another 2 for fiscal year 2021, but that was before, again, the COVID-19 crises hit us here. And obviously, this is going to have a tremendous budgetary impact upon the county and the municipalities this next year. So I contacted the county and withdrew my request for the 2 additional bodies for the next year. And we'll help the county and the cities get back on track, and we'll do like everybody else, work with what we have until we get out of this crisis, and then we'll attack this problem again. Next. Now for our legal update, I'm going to have Calentia give an update there.
Welcome, Ms. Dillard.
Good morning. I want to give you an update on the status of a legal matter that I presented to you during our November meeting. And if you recall, we were sued by a citizen who had requested a copy of a complaint during an ongoing investigation. And our investigator had refused to turn over that complaint. The citizen accepted the notion that certain information within our office during an ongoing investigation is confidential and exempt, but argued that the complaint predates the investigation and thus is not considered exempt under Florida statutes. We did not agree with that position. We went to the trial court level and prevailed. The citizen then appealed to the 4th District Court of Appeal. And I do want to say this was an opportunity for us to really work together with some other entities. We worked with 7 of the local OIGs, and we consulted with the state OIGs as well. And the county was very instrumental in moving forward with this litigation. I'm happy to say that we did prevail at the 4th District Court of Appeal. They agreed with our position and ruled that all information that we received related to investigations are in fact exempt. So this has a tremendous impact in how we operate. And again, I just want to say it was a great opportunity to partner and collaborate with other offices of Inspector General. So does anyone have any questions?
No, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Calentia. So, yeah, it was a great example of where we've come in working not only with the county staff, their attorney staff, a great relationship working together on this, and then the other IGs from across the state who came together and helped and worked with this and provided amicus briefs to work on this. Because again, this would have had impact across the state on inspector generals. If complaints coming in, it would have dramatically hindered our ability to investigate if somebody would be able to come in and get those complaints in the process of the investigations, because they could start hiding material, destroying material, doing all types of things. So again, this worked out well on our behavior and again, a lot of good team effort that was involved there. Okay, where are we going for the future? Our plans and future initiatives. Again, just where our vision, again, the biggest thing we want to do is to promote positive change. We're here to promote positive change in government, in all of the organizations. We're here to do that with an inspired and skilled team. And that's why you see every time that the certifications is critical and the training for Inspector General personnel, because the work we're doing is very technical. And if we're trying to come in and help other people, or we're doing sensitive investigations that has impact on people's lives, we better be doing that with a very skilled team. So we do invest in training. We invest in hiring the best people and keeping the best people around. And we work for continuous improvement, not only in the county, the cities, Solid Waste Authority, Children's Services Council, but in our very own office. We're constantly looking for improvement on our staff. Other initiatives, continuing our partnership with law enforcement. Again, there's a number of some cases right now we're working with law enforcement at the local level. We work with, again, the attorneys, state attorney's office, and we also working with the federal, our partners on cases. We're continuing to work with them, continuing to expand our contract oversight from not procurement, but other reviews that they're doing. And, oh, by the way, June 28th is our 10-year anniversary. And so we'll be celebrating that, and throughout the year thinking of ways that we can use that as an opportunity for more awareness of the office, that here's where we are, that people, if you have ideas to make government better, or if you see something that's not working the way it should be, to make sure and get with us.
Yeah, happy anniversary, General Kerry. You know, at the Commission on Ethics, we also are doing had our 10th anniversary, and we're reviewing and proposing changes to the ordinance. Is there any activity for the IG that would is required, or you're planning to look at the?
On our ordinance, I have not, we've seriously thought about that. At the present, we're not looking at making any changes in the ordinance right now, as there's always some things that we could make better, but it's a solid ordinance. It's it was modeled after the Association of Inspector Generals have a model that they put out for the nation of best, here's some of the best ordinance things that should be in IG's charters. It's modeled basically after that. And so it has some things we could improve, but overall I'm satisfied with the charter, and at this point we haven't tackled any changes to that.
Okay, thank you.
Also, looking at a number of our effort goes over oversight of that 1 penny sales tax. Now, the next item is our oversight of this $261 million that's come down to the county to be dispersed and used for relief for the coronavirus and the CARES Act. So the CARES Act, outside of providing $2.4 trillion across the country for relief, and it also established this special inspector general and established a special committee to oversee all the pandemic recoveries, the loans, the uses of our taxpayer dollars. And a lot of my former colleagues on the federal level are involved in that committee. Now, also, we've had, I'm on the board, as you know, of the National Association of Inspector Generals, and we've had web meetings with John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the CIGI, which the CIGI is the Council of IGs on Integrity and Efficiency, and that's the council of the 74 federal inspector generals. Many of those inspector generals are on that CARES oversight committee. So we've had WebEx meetings with them, speaking about how we're all going to approach this, sharing best practices about what IG should be doing, can be doing, should be doing to provide IG oversight of all of this money that, again, drastically needed, but it's also going to be importantly dispensed quickly to those in need, but with that comes also some risks. So IGs need to be involved in the oversight of that. I'm happy to say that, again, as we were talking about reaching out to the county approached us. And so the county has approached us and wanted to work with us, partner with us to make sure to provide any ideas that we had and any proper oversight of all the money that the county's dispensing, and that through the county is going to go down to the municipalities too. So we're going to be working with the county. We've been in communication, and we're going to be meeting with the county's internal auditor and also the clerk of the courts inspector general to make sure that all three of our offices, that we're going to coordinate our efforts not to be looking at the same thing. So we're going to be heavily involved in providing oversight for this money.
Okay, so my question would be, you're not waiting for a complaint. You're going to
No.
be there right at the beginning.
We are not waiting for complaints to come in, though we're ready, but we're going to be providing monitoring. We're going to be conducting evaluations on some of that money. We're going to be doing some audits. We're going to be probably spot checking to where some of this money is going out, that the people are actually using the money, some of the businesses that they're using the money for the intended. There are certain criteria that they have to be using this money that's provided to them. They signed an agreement with the county. Part of that agreement, we've talked to the county that it's in there, it's the standard language we have in our county contracts, that by accepting this money, you also acknowledge that the inspector general or auditor that we may come in and audit and look at you and look at your records to make sure that you're using this money as intended.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, summary of our accomplishment to date, 10 years. So in the 10 years since we've been in existence, again, we've received almost probably by June, we'll be up there to 12,000 hotline calls, complaints, correspondence. And again, I don't think this captures all, because we get calls not just only through our hotline office, but we get calls, I get calls, different folks in my office get calls for requests for information, complaints. So this captures most of it. But again, thousands of calls that's come in that's provided complaints, requests for help, and if we haven't been able to help them, we've directed them in the right direction. Again, here we go to that question cost and potential cost savings. $47.4 million of question cost. And again, I think that's important, because again, that's helping our government be better accountable for those taxpayer dollars, to make sure that if we are going to spend them, that we're spending them according to the right policy, the procedure, and making sure that we have proper justification of when we're using that, and then after the fact that they have the information that accountants, auditors can come in and make sure that that was spent properly. $24 million of that potential cost savings. And again, that includes those two categories of identified cost and avoidable cost. Made over 1,000 recommendations with a 95% acceptance rate of those recommendations, which again is pretty, that in my experience with my previous experience in other Inspector General's office and with other IGs, that's around that area is about what a lot of IGs get. Because again, once we find that there's a problem, find that there's something, then we work with management to try to come up with what's the best solution or recommendation to either fix the problem or make it better. So we usually work with them, and so we have a very high rate on acceptance of making those following up. Now, last time I remember it was asked what type of follow-up we do. And I think I didn't give ourselves as much credit as I should. We do have a follow-up program. On all of our recommendations, we go out every 6 months, sometimes up to quarter to no later than 6 month period. On every open recommendation that we have, we follow up to make sure that they're implemented. And we ask the city or the county, whoever we made the recommendations, not just to answer back, yes, we implemented that, but no, we ask for some type of evidence. What type of, was it a new policy? We want a copy of that policy. Was it some, so we ask for some type of evidence. We rarely go out on the scene because again, we have quite a bit more places that we've never been, but we do demand that they provide us evidence, not just a yes, we've implemented it, but we want to see some type of evidence. So we do have a good program. I mentioned last time because my previous IG was a lot larger at the federal level, so we had a specific division that was set up that they actually went back and did follow-up audits, or they would go on the scene. And some IGs do that, do more. Again, we're staffed. Again, we're not fully staffed, so we do what a lot of IGs do. So I think we do good. We don't do perfect, but for what we have, I think we do a good job of follow-up on our recommendations. And again, during those 10 years, 170 referrals to law enforcement, county or state commission on ethics. Again, a number of those came through directly through our investigations and audits that developed that ourselves. But again, the majority of those came through our hotline, that if not for our hotline and awareness of our office, those referrals would not have been made to other agencies who needed to have that information to take appropriate action. So 170 referrals and 19 as a direct result of either our investigations that turned into a criminal investigation then, or an audit that we conducted and found fraud. So from a direct result of our work, 19 arrests that have come about. That concludes my presentation. And if there are any questions, I'd love to talk to them.
You know, I'll always ask one.
Sir.
The indicators of how you detect violations are consistent with those in industry. Typically, industry, it's somebody says something, hotlines, training and culture. And that's what I see here. The question that I would ask you is there one specific element that if you had all the money you needed and all the personnel, you would add to your inventory of tools?
That's a great question. What would I add in that aspect of preventing if we had more resources, money? I would add probably a person and a system to do better outreach in the sense of awareness of our hotline. Because again, that's, as you well noted, all the studies over all of the years show the vast majority of fraud, waste, and abuse in business and in government does not come from management finding it. It does not come from even audits. We find a number of that in our audits, internal government or audit reviews. It comes from referrals, somebody on the ground seeing something that isn't done right and calling into a hotline someplace. So I would take that money in trying to get more, a focused awareness, and some of it's just not a money thing. It's getting with particularly the municipalities, getting it down to the worker level that they know they have an IG. City managers and and elected officials know we're there. Oftentimes, things that are going wrong, they're not brought to their attention. People don't want to bring to attention. And unfortunately, which is not true, most of the time that I would say in my experience, people who see things going wrong, see things that are suspected fraud, waste, abuse at the first line level, or maybe even the first line supervisor level, unfortunately, they assume that it's been going wrong and that management knows about it because to them it's so obvious. But they assume management knows about it, and if I bring it to their attention, it can only be bad things for me. That's why it's critical that IGs have that hotline number and that not only citizens are aware, but again, first line supervisors and people on the ground are aware of that hotline, that they have a place that they can call, and they can be anonymous, or they can, at the time, they can be anonymous and they can provide information that something's not right here and somebody needs to look into it. So it takes resources, but also it takes, still working on that barrier to get down and working with city managers, working with management to let them know that this is a good thing. We need to bring this, it's in all of our benefit. It may not be great news, but we got to find that. This is our taxpayer dollars, and it's in all of our benefit to find that. And it might be embarrassing sometimes to find that, but so that's a little long answer to a pretty basic question. I hope that answers it. That's what we're going to be working on too in this 10 years. I want to use our 10-year anniversary as a launching pad of awareness to try to ourselves to get more awareness out in the public, doing, looking at social media, different things that we can do to get us our awareness out that we have this hotline. Anybody, anywhere should be calling the IG if somebody suspects something's not right in government. This is all of our money. This is our government. We need to bring this to somebody's attention, and we're the folks they should bring it to.
The expression in management has always been, no one talks if no one listens. And I think you're on the right track with respect to that. And the percentage of frauds that are discovered by outside auditors is just about 4%.
Yes, exactly. People think, again, the classic, we still get this when we go in to do audits. Well, we have this outside financial statement audit. Why are you here? Again, they look at, as you know, a completely different aspect on a high-level books of paper, and they discover such a minuscule part. Your IGs and your internal auditors, that's where you're going to find this.
Thank you.
Okay, could I call on any of our fellow committee members on WebEx? Do we have any questions or comments for General Carey?
None. None from Terry Howard.
Okay.
None from Rodney Romano.
None from Dan.
Okay.
Okay, I want to thank you all for your continued support and your questions. What do they say? Iron sharpens iron.
Right.
And you help this office be a better office to serve the public. So I appreciate every time I come here, your questions, your comments, your suggestions, and I appreciate this and all of your support. So thank you.
Thank you, General Carey, to you and all of your wonderful staff that's here and back at the office or at home, wherever they're working. We're very fortunate to have all of you here. Thank you. Is there any public comment? I see no members of the public here. Is there any new business from any of the committee members to bring forth now? Okay. I guess we'll see you back here in 6 months. Thank you so much. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.